When we think of an avoidant person, the first thing most people notice is distance. They seem detached, cool, or uninterested. On the surface, this can easily be interpreted as a lack of care, a refusal to commit, or even indifference. Yet this interpretation misses the complexity beneath the surface. Avoidance is rarely about the absence of emotion. It is a protective mechanism, a carefully constructed shield meant to safeguard a vulnerable inner world that has, at some point, experienced threat, loss, or overwhelm. To understand why an avoidant behaves as they do, it is crucial to recognize that their outward detachment is a defense against the inner chaos that intense emotional connection can trigger. For an avoidant, closeness is rarely simple. It is often associated with a fear of being consumed, of losing autonomy, or of being exposed to emotional pain that feels unbearable. Their strategy, therefore, is not to refuse love entirely, but to regulate it through distance. This distance can manifest as emotional unavailability, reluctance to express feelings, or withdrawing when intimacy grows too intense. To the casual observer, these behaviors may appear cold or uncaring, but in reality, they are sophisticated survival tools. Every step back, every hesitancy, every pause in vulnerability is a way of managing the risk of emotional overwhelm. It is not that they do not feel deeply, rather, they feel too much in a way that threatens to destabilize their sense of self. This defensive orientation often has roots in early life experiences. For many avoidants, early attachment figures may have been inconsistent, unpredictable, or emotionally unavailable. As children, they may have learned that expressing needs or showing vulnerability could lead to rejection, disappointment, or emotional hurt. To cope, they developed strategies to maintain safety. These strategies often include minimizing emotional expression, creating physical or psychological distance from caregivers, and internalizing the belief that closeness is dangerous. As adults, these patterns continue, not because the avoidant has decided to be cold or unfeeling, but because the subconscious mind has coded intimacy as a threat. Love, in its full intensity, can feel like a storm that might sweep away the foundation of their identity. Avoidance is the anchor that keeps them grounded amid that storm. It is important to recognize that within this defensive structure lies a paradox. Avoidants often crave intimacy and connection as much as anyone else, sometimes even more intensely, but the very closeness they desire can trigger anxiety and fear. This creates a push-pull dynamic where they simultaneously long for connection and resist it. The intensity of their feeling is hidden beneath the shield of avoidance, which is why outsiders often misunderstand them. An avoidant may think deeply about their relationships, experience profound love internally, and yet appear distant or unresponsive externally. Their heart may be fully engaged, but their defense mechanisms keep it from being seen, regulated, or expressed in conventional ways. Understanding avoidance as a defense rather than a lack of feeling changes the way one interacts with an avoidant. It invites patience, empathy, and insight rather than frustration or blame. When someone sees the protective function behind the distance, they can approach the relationship with curiosity rather than judgment. They can understand that withdrawal is not rejection, that hesitancy is not indifference, and that what may appear as detachment is actually a finely tuned self-protective system. This perspective opens the door to deeper connection because it addresses the root of the behavior rather than its outward expression. Moreover, this understanding highlights that emotional safety is the key to intimacy with an avoidant. When they sense that their vulnerability will not be weaponized or used against them, when they perceive that connection does not demand surrendering their identity, the defensive structures begin to soften. The avoidant may start to take small emotional risks, testing the waters of intimacy in ways that feel manageable. These moments, though subtle, are profound expressions of trust. They are signs that the person is navigating the delicate balance between longing for connection and maintaining the internal equilibrium that keeps them secure. In summary, avoidant behavior is not a reflection of a lack of capacity for love, nor is it a statement about the worthiness of their partner. It is a sophisticated defense mechanism born from past experiences of vulnerability and fear. To see an avoidant clearly is to recognize that behind the cool exterior lies an intense inner life, rich with emotion and longing, carefully managed through distance and restraint. Their avoidance is a testament to the fragility and strength of the human psyche. It is the means by which they protect themselves while still seeking connection, even if that connection must unfold slowly and cautiously. For an avoidant, love is rarely simple or straightforward. They do not respond to pursuit in the way most people expect. In fact, chasing an avoidant often produces the opposite of intimacy. It triggers withdrawal, anxiety, and resistance. What truly draws them closer and what deepens their attachment is not relentless pursuit, but a subtle reflection of their own internal conflicts. This mirroring does not involve judgment, pressure, or attempts to fix them. It is an almost imperceptible recognition that their inner world, its fears, contradictions, and desires, is seen and accepted without needing to be resolved immediately. When someone can hold that reflection steadily, without pushing or demanding, an avoidant experiences something profoundly different, a sense that they can be known and yet remain autonomous. A realization that love does not require surrendering the parts of themselves they have guarded so carefully. The psychology behind this is rooted in the way avoidants relate to both intimacy and self. Avoidants are often caught in a tension between longing and fear. They desire closeness, yet they have learned, sometimes over decades, that intimacy comes with risk. Early experiences may have taught them that expressing neediness or vulnerability could lead to rejection, disappointment, or emotional overwhelm. As a result, they develop a protective distance, a set of internal rules designed to minimize exposure to emotional pain. This internal conflict between desire for connection and fear of dissolution is ever present, even if it is largely unconscious. What someone outside the avoidant may perceive as coldness or disinterest is often a strategy to navigate this ongoing tension. The avoidant is not indifferent. They are vigilant, protecting themselves from losing their carefully maintained balance. When a partner mirrors the avoidant's internal experience instead of chasing it, they create a unique form of psychological resonance. This mirroring can take many forms: subtle acknowledgement of their hesitations, gentle recognition of their fear without criticism, or an intuitive response to the rhythms of their withdrawal and return. The key is that the partner reflects the avoidant's inner reality without trying to change it or fill it with their own agenda. This creates a profound sense of being understood, a sensation that is rare and disarming for someone who has spent much of their life concealing emotional truths to protect themselves. They do not feel pressured to abandon their defense mechanisms, yet they are subtly invited to lower them. This is what makes the experience transformative rather than transactional. It is not about getting them to commit. It is about allowing them to see that connection and autonomy are not mutually exclusive. Chasing, on the other hand, reinforces the very fears that keep an avoidant at a distance. Pursuit signals potential engulfment, loss of control, and pressure to conform to someone else's emotional rhythm. It activates the internal alarm system that has been finely tuned over years, sometimes decades, to detect threats to autonomy. Each push from the outside triggers a corresponding pull inward, reinforcing avoidance rather than alleviating it. Love in this context becomes a source of anxiety rather than security, and the avoidant may even come to associate closeness with discomfort. This is why traditional approaches to relationships, persistent effort, insistence on communication, or constant reassurance can backfire spectacularly with avoidance. They do not respond to pressure with attachment, they respond with withdrawal. By contrast, reflection respects the inner tension. It acknowledges the contradictions without demanding resolution. For example, if an avoidant expresses ambivalence about emotional closeness, a partner who mirrors that ambivalence might respond with empathy rather than argument. They might say without judgment, "I hear that this feels overwhelming for you right now," instead of insisting, "You need to open up to me." This subtle difference communicates understanding rather than control. Over time, the avoidant internalizes the sense that closeness is not inherently threatening, that connection does not necessitate surrender, and that vulnerability can exist alongside autonomy. The result is not a sudden flood of attachment, but a slow, deep intensification of love that grows from security and psychological resonance rather than fear and obligation. In essence, the intensification of love occurs when the avoidant's inner conflict, its fears, ambivalence, and desires, is held and reflected rather than chased. The reflection provides a mirror in which they can see themselves clearly, without shame or pressure, and it invites them to gradually integrate the parts of themselves they have long guarded. They learn, often unconsciously at first, that closeness need not erode identity and that emotional intimacy can coexist with independence. This subtle shift in perception transforms the dynamics of attachment. It allows love to move from a place of fear and self-protection to a place of connection and trust. The avoidant, for the first time, experiences the paradox of being known without being consumed, of being vulnerable without losing autonomy, and of being loved without compromise. When considering how an avoidant experiences love, it is important to understand that what truly attracts them is not external validation or constant reassurance. Many people mistakenly believe that avoidants are emotionally unavailable because they do not express their feelings openly, and therefore, if they were shown more love, they would respond. This assumption misunderstands the inner logic of avoidance. Avoidants do not crave reassurance in the way a clingy or anxious person might. They crave integration. By integration, we mean the ability to hold all parts of themselves, the fearful, the longing, the protective, and the vulnerable, without needing to split off or hide aspects of their inner life. They are drawn to people who can witness and accept the full complexity of their being without forcing them into a simplified or idealized mold. Avoidants have often spent much of their lives managing inner fragmentation. Emotional experiences that were too intense, too threatening, or too confusing were suppressed, compartmentalized, or denied. In childhood, they may have learned that expressing fear, need, or dependency led to punishment, criticism, or abandonment. To survive, they created inner walls, dividing the parts of themselves that felt safe from those that felt dangerous. As adults, these walls remain, often unconscious, creating a complex landscape of emotional contradiction. A part of them longs for connection, another part fears engulfment. A part wants to be seen, another wants to hide. For them, love is experienced not as a simple, continuous emotion, but as a negotiation between these opposing forces within themselves. What attracts an avoidant is someone who allows these contradictions to coexist without judgment. When a partner can tolerate moments of withdrawal, ambivalence, or emotional distance without panic, scolding, or coercion, the avoidant begins to feel a subtle sense of relief. This relief arises not from being reassured that they are loved, but from feeling that the fragmented parts of their psyche are not being forced to conform to an external standard. They sense that they can be whole and imperfect while still being acceptable to someone else. This acceptance becomes magnetic because it aligns with an avoidant's deepest, often unarticulated desire: to integrate the many parts of themselves that have been silenced, split off, or feared for so long. Integration, in this sense, is both internal and relational. Internally, it allows the avoidant to bring together previously conflicting elements of their emotional life: desire and fear, vulnerability and autonomy, closeness and independence. Relationally, it manifests as a partner who does not demand immediate disclosure, who does not overreact to withdrawal, and who can hold space for the avoidant's rhythms without attempting to control them. The avoidant experiences this as a kind of psychological safety that is rare and profoundly appealing. For the first time, love is not a threat to their identity. It is a context in which their internal conflicts can coexist without danger. This sense of integration transforms the relationship from a source of tension into a source of connection. The avoidant's need for integration also explains why traditional approaches to love, constant affirmation, frequent communication, or overt displays of affection, often backfire. These behaviors can feel like pressure to conform, a subtle demand that they collapse their internal complexity to fit a simpler narrative of closeness. Avoidants, when faced with this, tend to retreat further because their internal experience cannot be so easily simplified. What they respond to instead is the ability to be fully themselves while remaining in relationship. When a partner models acceptance of complexity, they signal that love does not require self-erasure. The avoidant begins to experience a profound paradox. Closeness does not mean losing themselves, and vulnerability does not necessitate abandonment. This paradox, once internalized, intensifies attachment far more than external reassurance ever could. Integration also deepens over time. Each instance in which an avoidant's withdrawal, hesitation, or conflicting emotions is met with understanding rather than pressure reinforces the sense that their inner world can exist in harmony with connection. The avoidant gradually learns to trust that love can be stable even when they fluctuate between intimacy and distance. They experience the relationship as a safe container for all parts of themselves, which reduces fear and heightens longing simultaneously. Love is no longer simply an external phenomenon to be pursued or earned. It becomes an internalized experience of wholeness, facilitated by the relational context. This is why avoidants often seem to love quietly but intensely. The more their fragmented inner world is accepted, the more deeply their attachment grows. In essence, what an avoidant loves is the ability to be integrated rather than reassured. They are not seeking constant affirmation that they are lovable. They are seeking a relational environment in which all aspects of themselves, the protective and the vulnerable, the longing and the fearful, can coexist. Integration allows them to experience love as an expansion of self rather than a threat to self, and it is this subtle, profound dynamic that intensifies their attachment in ways that simple reassurance never could. For an avoidant, the concept of safety in love is profoundly different from what most people imagine. Many assume that being close, spending time together, or sharing intimate moments automatically creates a sense of security in a relationship. For avoidants, however, the very idea of closeness can trigger fear. Emotional intimacy is not inherently safe. It becomes threatening if it requires them to compromise, fragment, or surrender aspects of themselves that they rely on to maintain a sense of identity. Safety, therefore, is not measured by proximity or frequency of contact, but by the freedom to remain whole while being seen, acknowledged, and engaged with. It is the permission to exist fully, including the parts of themselves that are contradictory, guarded, or complex, without the fear of being rejected or swallowed by the other person. Avoidants have often developed patterns of self-protection early in life. Emotional needs that were expressed too openly might have been met with criticism, abandonment, or unpredictability. Over time, they learned that closeness often comes at a cost. Revealing too much of oneself risks exposure, and exposure risks pain. To navigate this, they built inner structures, mental, emotional, and sometimes physical walls that allow them to interact with others without being entirely consumed by emotional intensity. These structures are adaptive. They serve the purpose of maintaining integrity and preventing psychological overwhelm. However, they also create a paradox. The very walls that protect them can make them feel isolated, and yet any attempt to breach those walls prematurely feels like danger. Hence, safety is less about being near someone and more about feeling that their inner complexity will be respected and not pressured. When an avoidant perceives that safety is grounded in permission rather than closeness, it changes the dynamic of love entirely. They begin to realize that intimacy does not require them to abandon their autonomy or fragment themselves further. A partner who demonstrates this principle does not demand immediate vulnerability or constant disclosure. Instead, they create a relational space where the avoidant can regulate their own engagement, retreat when necessary, and return when ready. This approach signals that love is not a trap, but a container in which all of the avoidant's internal contradictions, the longing for closeness and the fear of engulfment, can coexist without penalty. In this space, the avoidant experiences a rare equilibrium. They can be present in relationship without losing the structure that protects them, and they can maintain the parts of themselves that were previously hidden or denied. The permission to remain whole also encompasses the freedom to express ambivalence or resistance without triggering conflict or judgment. Avoidants are often highly sensitive to perceived pressure, criticism, or attempts to control their emotions. When a partner responds to their hesitation with patience and acceptance, rather than insistence or coercion, the avoidant learns that safety lies not in compliance, but in being authentically themselves. This realization is profound because it reverses a core assumption they may have carried for years, that love requires submission or the suppression of certain parts of self. Instead, they begin to understand that connection can honor their integrity and that love is not a force that demands sacrifice of identity. Over time, this sense of safety fosters a gradual deepening of trust and attachment. The avoidant begins to take small emotional risks, testing the boundaries of intimacy while observing that the relational container remains stable. They may share thoughts or feelings they previously withheld, allow themselves to be physically or emotionally closer, or engage more consistently with the partner without fear of being consumed. Each of these small steps reinforces the principle that true safety is about permission, the ability to integrate closeness with autonomy rather than proximity alone. As they internalize this experience, the avoidant develops a more secure attachment pattern where love is no longer a source of threat, but a context for wholeness. Crucially, this understanding reframes the way we perceive avoidant attachment. Their emotional distance is not a reflection of lack of feeling or incapacity to love. Rather, it is a strategy to preserve integrity in the face of perceived threat. When safety is redefined as permission rather than closeness, the avoidant's defensive systems begin to relax. The relationship shifts from a push-pull dynamic of fear and desire to a steady space where vulnerability and independence can coexist. This transformation is subtle but powerful, creating conditions for deep, sustained, and authentic love that grows from mutual respect for autonomy rather than constant reassurance or enforced intimacy. For an avoidant, the experience of love is deeply tied to the tension between autonomy and connection. Unlike people who feel secure expressing affection freely, avoidants often experience attachment as a delicate balancing act. On one hand, they desire closeness and intimacy. They long to be seen, understood, and connected in meaningful ways. On the other hand, they fear losing themselves in that closeness. Emotional proximity can feel threatening because it has the potential to erode the boundaries they have carefully constructed to protect themselves. As a result, their attachment behaviors are often paradoxical. They may seek connection but simultaneously withdraw, express interest but remain emotionally distant, or demonstrate affection yet insist on maintaining personal space. Understanding this dynamic is key to fostering a relationship that allows desire and love to grow naturally for an avoidant. The balance between autonomy and connection is not merely a preference, it is a psychological necessity for avoidants. Autonomy represents the sense of self that they have cultivated over time, a collection of emotional defenses, personal boundaries, and self-reliance mechanisms that keep them psychologically safe. Connection represents the emotional bonds and relational intimacy that are often at odds with these defenses. For an avoidant, if connection threatens autonomy, it triggers anxiety, withdrawal, or emotional disengagement. Conversely, if autonomy is respected while connection is available, desire and attachment flourish. The avoidant experiences a paradoxical freedom. They can remain themselves without fear of losing love, and they can engage in intimacy without fear of being overwhelmed. This balance is subtle, yet it has profound consequences for the depth and longevity of love in their relationships.